Radio for Justice brings you up to the minute news and conversation around the criminal legal system in Colorado and beyond. Welcome to Up to the Minute.
Hi, my name is Trevor Jones. I'm a co-host with Colorado Radio for Justice today on Up to the Minute. And this is my host with the most, Tiffany McCoy.
I'm Tiffany McCoy, also with Colorado Radio for Justice. And we are here at the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition with our guest, Jen Dillon, the Communications Coordinator.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So, Jen, last week we spoke with Kyle, and we had been covering some of the issues surrounding a potential veto by the governor, and we were wondering if you had any more insight or if anything had actually happened regarding that bill.
Yeah, that's House Bill 1147. That's the bill that would disallow municipal courts from creating these really stringent penalties that are much higher than what the state courts allow. And we're still in a holding pattern there. The governor has, indicated that he might veto that bill. It's gone through the legislature. Both the Senate and the House have passed it. So hopefully he decides to sign it. There's been a lot of activism around that, people writing letters and calling and asking the governor to sign that bill. And hopefully he makes the right decision.
Wonderful. Thank you for that update. Yeah. We do want to keep following that. And what do we have going on this week that we need to be paying attention to?
Yeah, there's two bills that are almost through the legislature that are pretty exciting. The first one is Senate Bill 190. It's called Offender Release from Custody. What it would do is it addresses a couple of issues in Colorado about how we release people from incarceration, right? It tackles two big problems. Number one, people in jail, when they're released on bond, right? When their bond is paid, there's like a certain amount of time that the jails have to release people. So depending on when that's paid, people can be released at like 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and they just leave with whatever they had on their back. So they might have a dead phone and like no way to connect to their housing services, their mental health services, their, substance use services. So what this bill would do, it would allow people to decide. They can leave at 1 in the morning if they want to, but they could also stay until 10 o'clock the next day. So that they can more easily access a lot of things. Buses are running, that kind of thing. So that's one aspect. The other part of it is the Department of Corrections has this program called Special Needs Parole, which is supposed to allow people who are either extremely elderly or seriously ill for them to leave prison and go to, either home with their family or to assisted living or like even a hospice care, right? Unfortunately, it just doesn't work very well. So there's very few people who are leaving through special needs parole, far fewer than the system was supposed to be handling. So we have a lot of very elderly and very sick people in Colorado prisons. It's extremely expensive for our state to manage their care in prison, right? So these folks are not a risk to anyone. They should be, they're supposed to be released back into community, but because of certain roadblocks in the law, they can't be. So what this law would do is just remove some of those barriers so that people could leave the prison under special needs parole.
So as you speak about this, you say that these are people who should be leaving or are supposed to be leaving.
The system was designed for them to
There is actually policy and legislation in place that allows this process to occur, but as it is right now, it's not being utilized because, from what I understand, there's like some definition issues, like some medical need, definition problems, and other, like you mentioned, just problems with how the legislation was written to begin with.
Exactly. It's just like technical issues that are preventing this program from working as it should.
And so with what's happening with this legislation now, are these matters being addressed and hopefully rectified?
that's the idea, right? To fix these technical errors that are preventing this program from working as it's supposed to, so that people, who are seriously ill can go into hospice instead of dying in prison, things like that, situations like that.
What is the temperature on it? How does it seem like it's moving?
So it's kind of exciting. It's gone through the Senate, it's gone through the House committees, and now it's going to be voted on in the House. And at that point, it'll go to the governor, right? We haven't heard that he's antagonistic to it, so hopefully.
Very exciting. Wonderful.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
What else do we have going on right now?
Yeah, the other bill that's really interesting is House Bill 1026. It would remove medical copays for people who are in Colorado state prisons. Like right now, people who are incarcerated have to pay copays for all of their medical care, vision care, dental care, that kind of thing, like $5 copays for all these things, and even for missed appointments, right? You think $5 doesn't sound like that much, but it's a lot when Colorado prisoners make about 67 cents per day.
Yeah, I definitely I remember people choosing not to go to medical when they needed to.
Exactly.
Because if you only get $12 a month, right?
Yeah.
And it costs $3 to go to an appointment, but
Yeah.
you need to call your kids and buy hygiene and write letters and all these things. Sometimes you're going to choose to not get the care that you need because you have to pay for it and
Right.
you don't get a lot of money. So,
And the wild thing is that the program costs more to administer than they take in copays, right? So it's costing them more. People are not getting the care that they need, like preventative type care. Mm-hmm. So then when they get really sick, then it's really expensive for us. So it doesn't make any sense at all to charge people copays when that system costs more to administer than they actually make, and it prevents people from getting the kind of preventative care that, creates bigger issues.
So does this current legislation eliminate copays completely?
Yes.
And ideally, this will open up care for inmates in need?
Yeah, exactly. People will be more likely to go, get their eyes checked, get their dental work done, get their, chest pain looked into, whatever it might be, right? Early.
Is this bill seeming like it's moving through pretty effectively?
Also has moved, it's a House bill, so it's gone through the House, it's gone through some Senate committees, and it's up for vote in the Senate very soon and going to the governor, we hope.
if people who are not incarcerated are not paying the copays anymore, who does pay for these medical appointments?
Yeah, so the state would then pick up the entire cost. They would pay the $5 additional, and in exchange, they would no longer have to manage the system that tracks the copays and collects those fees that is more expensive than what they take in copays to begin with.
Going forward, we're obviously almost at the end of the legislative session,
Yeah.
correct? What might we want to be looking for the next couple of weeks, or as this session closes out, that at least the CCJRC has their fingers on?
Yeah, what usually happens at this time of year is there's a rush to get everything done, right? Because there's a hard deadline. They can't stay a couple extra days to work out the kinks and pass a couple more bills. The last day of session is the last day of session, so whatever didn't get taken care of just dies on the calendar, right? So that's why everyone's like working furiously to make sure that their bill is not the one that's left on the calendar to rot, yeah, or be taken up next year. It's just a very time-consuming, expensive process to run a bill through the legislature, so you don't want to have to do it again if you don't have to. You want to get it done.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Jen. In just a moment, we will be meeting Kim and Langston from End Slavery, Colorado. And we're back. This is Colorado Radio for Justice with Up to the Minute. I am your host, Tiffany McCoy.
And I'm Tiffany's co-host, Trevor Jones. And we are here today with Langston and Kim, who are from End Slavery, Colorado. And they're going to be speaking to us about a piece of legislation being considered right now, which will affect prisoners or inmates and offenders' visiting rights or privileges, depending on how they are phrased. And we would love to get introduced with you. And could you tell us a little bit about what End Slavery Colorado is actually about?
Absolutely. So my name is Kim Ray, and I am the co-facilitator of End Slavery Colorado, co-chair of End Slavery Colorado, along with Wynn from Working Families Party. And in slavery, Colorado is kind of a continuation from a ballot measure back in 2018 called Amendment A. And that particular ballot measure removed the exception clause around slavery in the 13th Amendment in the Colorado Constitution. And so what we hoped when that, overwhelmingly won, that there would be some litigation and some legislation that would happen. And back in 2022, I want to say, Torch Justice and Max Law filed a lawsuit based off of Amendment A in involuntary servitude in Colorado prisons. So In Slavery Colorado was born to provide the community support and education around that lawsuit.
My name is Langston Mayo, and I have the privilege of being one of our coalition managers for the program. And so I report directly to Kim and Wynn, and I have a co-manager, Demetrius.
Excellent. Thank you. Before we touch on the current legislation that we are here to talk to you about today, you mentioned Amendment 13 a moment ago, and the name of the organization, In Slavery Colorado. People think slavery ended in the Civil War or maybe in a couple of events after that, Civil Rights Movement or something. Why have the name In Slavery, and what is going on that we still need these fights?
Well, there's when the Constitution was built, there was the 13th Amendment, but there's an exception clause that says unless you have been duly convicted of a crime, so what we did is we changed it so that in Colorado that there shall not be any slavery or involuntary servitude, period. But that still exists in our federal Constitution. After this ballot measure and the change in the Constitution, we kind of hope that the Department of Corrections would say, okay, we don't do that anymore. We don't force people to work. And that's currently a statute in the policies of Department of Corrections that you have to work or be involved in an educational system. But most of the time it's working, be it in the kitchen, or we've even talked to people who their job was literally to go out and sweep the dirt in the yard. And then obviously we can get into wages and protections and all of those things that people who work, normally like you and I, would have. They don't have those things, right? And so that is the work of In Slavery Colorado, is how are we looking at and changing those practices that are happening? Because actually, to kind of backtrack a little bit, not only do you have to work, but you're punished if you don't.
I'm formerly incarcerated, and I definitely remember, I just got out, so I remember, right? But I definitely remember first getting there. And when I first got to prison, they said, you make 12 cents a day or 60 cents a day, right? And I was brand new. And for some reason, I did the math and I came up with that was $120 a month, right? Which is still not a lot. And then my roommate said, that is $12 a month, girl. And I was like, wow. And I remember all the talk about, the slavery, and we're not there. People said we weren't slaves because they paid us something, a little bit of money. And then I remember there was a time in prison where people who did not work had to wear orange pants, and they were in a program called restricted privileges. But then I feel like there was a time where the orange pants went away. And I wonder if it correlated with when things got changed in the law.
So I think it depends on the prison that you're at.
Okay.
Because currently some of those restrictive privileges still exist. Mm-hmm. The change of your color of clothing, meaning you're ostracized, still exists, right? So, but yes, there are folks that I know that make a whole $7 a month, and we're not even going to talk about, people will say like, well, you're in prison, so you get food, you get shelter, you get all of the things that you need for life, but we know that that's not true, and commissary is pretty expensive, so if you don't have family on the outside, life looks pretty dire on the inside.
Absolutely. So we have you here today speaking about visitation rights. Tell me about it.
So as Kim was walking us through about from 2018 to now, around the conversations that have been happening post Amendments A passing, and one of the things that the coalition was hearing often was about, again, the restrictive privileges, and particularly about visitation being used as a tool of punishment, and saying that, well, if you don't work, no, you don't have the right, or you're not deserving of talking to your family or your loved ones or your community outside. And so prior to me joining the coalition, there have been talks with some of our champions beneath the dome to say, like, okay, we're seeing enough of a pattern here that folks are being punished via their visitation if they don't work, or simply for other infractions, that happen within the CDOC. And so now, starting in January of this session, House Bill 25-1013 is the goal, the long-term goal, to make sure that visitation no longer is a privilege in the state of Colorado, but a right. And we're really excited about the idea that phone calls, in-person visits, contact and non-contact will be a right for folks. Again, our ultimate goal is to make sure that folks are able to contact their loved ones, and their loved ones are able to be in contact with them on the inside, because their folks' families and friends should not have to serve a punishment alongside of the folks inside. So,
Can I play a devil's advocate for just a moment with this? If someone wants to hang out with their family or see their friends, then they should be committing crimes and ending up incarcerated. So how would you give an explanation to someone who might feel that way?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we do hear some of those pieces, and again, I can get into a little bit later as well. Around, we did some polling at the beginning of the calendar year that said 77% of the state, again, regardless of party line, says that they view visitation as a form of rehabilitation. And so, if folks are feeling that, like, oh, you shouldn't make mistakes, well, then again, everyone, like, you can't throw stones in a glass home. Like, we know that crime is a construct, and that's a different conversation. But as far as what is currently constructed, no one should be deprived of that, because even if you don't feel any type of empathy as you should for folks inside, you should still feel empathy for those mothers and those sons and daughters and those other loved ones. And so, if I make a mistake, my mother shouldn't have to pay for it, and vice versa.
So how does the visitation and the family connections help the people incarcerated?
Oh, man. Again, we see that recidivism drops at a great number that we feel good about, especially with the number that is in Colorado around that 50% mark. We feel and see through conversation the type of feedback that we've gotten from the organic testimony that's happened on this bill shows that people just want to feel like someone cares about them on the inside, because folks are incarcerated. Again, I have to tell you all about the dehumanization of you're reduced down to a number. And so if you have a mother, a father, a friend, a child that you can call, or has the ability to come see you in person, there's a chance that, hey, wherever it is that got me here, I'm not going to come back for it. But if you don't have any hope, where are you going to go?
So I have a personal take on this as well. I spent many years incarcerated. I was inside for about 26 and a half years. I got locked up when I was a juvenile. And I've been out for a couple of years and have had a pretty good degree of success. And a lot of that success is because of my family and friends. And it was with these people who I've stayed in contact with for all those years. Being able to maintain those bonds enabled me to have that help when I got out. And I know that if someone hadn't had the same level of help that I have, their fight is going to be so much harder when they do get out. And they don't have those contacts. They don't have the anchors to keep them safe as they navigate this difficult world out here. And I know there's instances where even with my own family, people would drive from out of state, or even just from Denver to the far outlying facilities, all far away from the major metropolitan areas. And when they would get to a facility, oh, sorry, the facility is on lockdown. Yeah, you guys can't have your visit today. So can you guys speak to the family side a little bit about what it means, not just for the incarcerated, but what it means for the community when people can't have their visits?
Well, through testimony and even personal experience, right? There's nothing like, even with a phone call, right? But there's nothing like being able to put eyes on your loved one, on the person that you care about. And even that's the difference between like a parent having a relationship with their kid versus not. And there's a huge impact on that, because there's a huge amount of kids in Colorado that have parents that are currently incarcerated. But, I think about one particular story. She came all the way from Las Vegas to visit her husband with her 2-year-old daughter. And this is the only time that her child, like she was pregnant when he went in. And so the only way that this baby knows her dad is through these visits. And her visit was canceled at the last minute with no notice. So not only was there a monetary impact, we're talking airline, hotel, rental car, food, all of those things. But then there was an emotional impact because, understanding, yes, like things happen, but there was no explanation. She was not given any explanation. And she was actually treated pretty like it was pretty callous. And so now as much as she wants to see her husband again, she's nervous because not many folks have like $2,000 to just kind of blow to the wind. But like even locally, that's a 3-hour drive to most prisons. And that is and then not only that, but having things taken away for no, like minimal reasons or not even told a reason. Right. And it leaves you feeling, a lot of folks feeling hurt, especially because a lot of times the person on the inside doesn't even know that you showed up. Right. And so there's this break in communication where someone feels like they've been stood up or bailed on without any notice. And then on the other end, so it's just a lot of loss and confusion and hurt that happens.
So the added trauma of an already very difficult and traumatic situation that may actually hinder someone's, growth and rehabilitation while they're on the inside.
There's a thing in prison called gender responsiveness with the way they treat men in prison as opposed to how they treat women in prison and all the rules behind that. And like, for instance, when a man gets in trouble, they can take away his phone privileges, but for a woman, they can't. Have you seen any kind of information on the difference between women getting visits and men getting visits or anything like that?
So, yes. So while we're, doing some research and we discovered like, oh, wow. So women don't lose their phone privileges unless the infraction has something specifically to do with the visit, right? And then you only lose it for 3 days. Whereas men can lose their privileges up to 90 days, if not longer, depending on what's going on. And you're absolutely right. And so, the conversation has been like, well, if you can do that for the women, why can't we just extend that to the men? But I think that there's this idea for women, the women's prison, it was based on being parents, right? But guess what? Men are parents too. And they definitely, dads do make a difference, even if it's through a phone call. Kids need to know that they're still cared about and loved.
The prison I was in, there was a men's prisons right next door. And of course, we communicate with other people in other prisons. And the women had a lot more family like activities and like reunification days and mom and kid days and like all these things that men just didn't have.
So a moment ago, you actually mentioned the name of the current bill, the number of it. I think it was kind of long. What will this bill do if it gets passed?
Well, one, it would shift visitation from being a privilege to a right. So it couldn't just be, a tool of punishment, right? And then not only that, but it also allows for when a person who is currently incarcerated has a loved one that has passed away, Department of Corrections has to make every effort to allow them to attend the funeral virtually, right? And that also includes the birth of a loved one, right? So oftentimes, like I explained, there was the gentleman who was incarcerated, his wife had a baby. She could whip out her phone and introduce him to his daughter, right? Reach is just as important, right? And so that's what it does. And then it also adds a lot more clarity as to when visitation could be taken away. And then also what we've included in this bill more recently is also a reason. So a reason, notice, as much notice as possible, because things do happen. But but also there has to be a reason.
So you're, in a way, asking for a little bit more good faith from the Department of Corrections. Does the legislation apply simply to state facilities? Does it apply to any other jails or city jails, county jails, or private prisons? Does it apply across the board?
So it would be state. There's a total different movement that's happening with jails. That's right to hug. So that's oftentimes we kind of got a little mixed up there. But they are looking to do the same thing, to provide in-person visits for folks who are in jails, as they have shifted to just purely virtual like visits, even though you're in the same room, like same building. But I know it's definitely state prisons for sure.
The private prisons would, but as long as it's a state-run facility, not federal, and as Kim said, not at the county level either.
Who are the sponsors of this bill?
Absolutely. We're really proud to have that. One overview is that it's the Black Legislative Caucus, it's their priority bill, so it's going to be held on primary sponsors. In the House is going to be Assistant Majority Leader Jennifer Bacon, and then as well as Regina English in the House. And then over in the Senate, we have President James Coleman and Senator Exum as well. So again, we feel good about our champions that have been carrying this bill for us.
I just want to say this to add it into the conversation. So we talked a lot about restricted privileges, and what that is like people in prison already have restricted privileges, right? But what that is like more restrictions. Yeah. No TV, no sweats, no canteen food. So that's what restricted privileges is?
Absolutely. I'm glad you did bring that up, because I know there's so much misconception about what the experience inside of a prison is, and that exactly you're already limited around what you can do and express yourself, and restricted privileges makes that even tougher for folks.
I mean, and as Kim had mentioned with the change of clothes, it's ostracizing. It makes you stand out as if you're doing something wrong. And then they actually, formerly, when I was still inside, when they put you on RP, they would take your property that you couldn't use or couldn't have while you were on RP, tape it in a box, and then leave it in your room. Oh. And then if you were to tamper with it, it would be then tampering with the security device.
Oh, wow.
However, as this goes forward, how can people stay on top of what's happening, not just with this particular bill, but within slavery, Colorado?
Well, I would say as far as the bill goes, we feel really hopeful about those pieces. And again, we'll hope and believe that our good governor will do the right thing to make sure that this bill gets signed. And so as far as that goes, but we want still to hear stories regarding this piece, because again, this doesn't, once the bill is signed into law, it doesn't stop the awareness around, make sure that visitation is important. But as far as getting part of the coalition, please reach out to us in slavery. Is .com or .org? .org. It's all, sorry, off the long day. .org. In slavery, Colorado, at Gmail as well. Send us an email, get in contact so we can get your information as an individual or as an organization. We'll love to have you be a part of the coalition to join one of our subcommittees.
Is there anything else you guys would like to add to this conversation today?
Yes, always. We need community support more than anything. We also need to make sure that the governor does, in fact, support it. And the only way that happens is that if he hears from communities. So we need phone calls, emails. We do have an action alert that's available on all of our social media pages. Fill it out. In fact, you just got to click a button there, but even a phone call makes a huge difference.
Thank you again for joining us. This is Colorado Radio for Justice with Up to the Minute. I am your host, Tiffany McCoy.
And I'm Trevor Jones, co-host. And catch us every week on Up to the Minute on Colorado Radio for Justice.
Up to the Minute is a production of Colorado Radio for Justice. Tune into our 24/7 broadcast on www.radioforjustice.org. Listen on the app from the App Store and Google Play. Catch this show and other original works shifting the narrative on the criminal legal system on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Colorado Radio for Justice.